Today we're going to be talking about gender issues. From your book, if you read Hidden Keys to Loving Lasting Marriage, he gives an example I'm going to start with, and that's the example. He says, men are buffaloes and women are butterflies. How many of you have been to the zoo here? Ever been to the buffalo cage? What does the buffalo cage look like? But it's very unique in that the fence posts are welded steel pipes about this big around, and they're driven into the ground at 45-degree angles. Why do you think?
Mean buffalo.
That's right. So the buffaloes charge the fence. They just knock the fence in deeper, where if they were straight up, they would flatten the fence and they would all get out. And see, that's sort of like what men are like, is that they have one mode, it's called charge. They go around in life, they're like the buffalo in that field, right? And a 50-knot wind won't even faze them. They stomp on all the flowers. They, if anything happens, they just lower their head and knock down the trees or knock down the fence posts. They just eat the grass, and when they get focused on one thing, you just can't get them off that one particular thing. They don't notice anything else happening. They just munch and they just keep going. And then you have the butterfly, right? And the butterfly just flaps around, and the butterfly loves the flower that the buffalo steps on. And a little wind will blow that butterfly any place all off, and a little stone on the butterfly's wing will totally disable the butterfly. Well, it seems like almost nothing can disable that buffalo, right? And of course the challenge is to get a buffalo and a butterfly to exist in the same field and to get along. You know the way it usually goes, don't you? Mr. Buffalo, would you get off my wing? And the only way she can get the buffalo's attention is what? Fly up his nose and flutter around. And that's sort of what life is in most marriages. Because see, they have it such a different perspective. See, I don't believe that men and women are different. I believe they actually live totally different existences, and they actually perceive life so different from each other, they're actually living almost in different universes. And the way they see things and the way they think about things. And that there's some things you're just never going to get a man and a woman to see the same, period. Because what do we usually do? We make the mistake of thinking that from our world, that's the way it is, and we think the other person is in their world, and that what they're doing is how we see things. And we try to interpret them from our world. And that causes tremendous confusion in families, in marriage, and everything else. When we get further into communication, you're going to find, my suggestion is 50% of all communication in most marriages just goes like that. Because there are different methods, there are different things. And in marriage and family therapy, especially in marital counseling, we have all of these things, and we have to help them understand that the other person is not seeing, perceiving, thinking anything close to how they're seeing and perceiving. See, do you think that that buffalo is out there just stomping out all the flowers just to make the butterfly unhappy? A lot of butterflies think so. Do you think he even noticed when he stepped on her wing? Hasn't got a clue. And in your counseling, you're going to find that you're going to have some men, I call them wild buffaloes, and they don't have a clue at all. Usually why? Because they never had a dad. particularly the men that have never had dads or have been abandoned by their dads, they never had a balanced model, right? Where did they get their ideas of what a man is supposed to be? Schwarzenegger movies. What do we tell men in our society? We tell them that they're supposed to be the all self-sufficient ones, right? They're supposed to be the ones that have the answers to everything. They're supposed to keep their wife happy. They're supposed to make everything work out just fine. Like the suggestion we say is that they're supposed to be a combination of Schwarzenegger, James Bond, Superman, and Father Knows Best. See, what's that a definition of? God. God is the only all self-sufficient one. He's the only one that has all the answers, that can do everything. So what do men try to be in our society? God. And see, they operate from one whole set of things, one whole way of looking at things. We'll look at that in a minute. But how about ladies? What do we tell ladies they're supposed to be? Beautiful. You know? 54, 10, 54. You know? They're supposed to look like all the models from Hollywood, right? They're supposed to be like Twiggy. They're supposed to just be there and just do everything and just be beautiful and wonderful and available at all times. And if you do have kids, you're supposed to take care of the kids and take care of the family and cost the guy nothing, right? And never have their own opinions. They're just supposed to listen to him in awe.
Calm, Lord.
Oh, Master. Bow down and worship when he walks in the door, right? And they're supposed to be good girls, right? They're the ones supposed to go to church and to love God and to pray and to keep the whole family together and make everything function and be able to put up with his abuse and everything else that's going on and not say anything. In other words, they're supposed to find a God here on earth and bow down and worship and I keep this God happy so that God will meet all their needs according to his riches and glory, right?
Pastor, does Nancy know about that?
You see the extremes? And I'm sure you know that those extremes are what we call codependency, right? Which is really dysfunctional marriages, dysfunctional relationships. But that's sort of what our society, if you watch the movies, if you watch TV, if you watch the soaps, that's pretty much the message you get. And so who are the people that have the biggest problems? The ones that didn't have good models at home. The people that come from the dysfunctional families, right? Because they didn't have the good models, so that's what they think life is supposed to be like. And then when they get married, what happens? Reality sets in. Have you heard the statement that when a couple gets married, really 6 people get married? You ever hear that statement? The person you think you are gets married to the person you think they are. And the person they think they are gets married to the person they think you are. And the person you really are gets married to the person they really are. And the job on the honeymoon is kick the other 4 out of bed. Meredith Meyer suggests that within the first year of marriage, you need a totally new contract. Because now you finally found out who you got married to, and you finally found out who you really are. Because when we get married, we don't see that. You just have your perceptions. And your perceptions are so different. And they're usually stereotyped. And you usually have these ideas of how it's all going to be wonderful. And it's all going to be fantastic. And we're not going to have any problems. Other people just have problems. Do you understand it? But everything is going to be wonderful and okay. And this person's going to meet all my needs. Those are kind of the ideas. But we don't understand the differences here. We don't understand the problems. The Bible in 1 Peter 3:7 says, "Likewise, you husbands, dwell with them according to knowledge, giving honor unto your wife as unto the weaker vessel, and as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers be not hindered." It is saying you're going to have to learn how to dwell according to knowledge. There's actually two levels of this. Okay, the first level is what we're dealing with in class today, and that is gender differences. You're going to have to learn, if you're a wild buffalo, how to treat butterflies so they don't fly away, because 70% of the butterflies fly out of the field into somebody else's field because of the way the buffalo treats them. But there's a second level, and that is everyone is different and everyone has their own particular issues, right? How you were brought up in your family, the things that happen in your family set the way you see things and the way you are, and you need to learn about those things. You need to learn where your wife or your husband is sensitive, what things bother them, what things to do and what not to do, so you can accommodate, and the two of you can work together. Remember the illustration I gave you before, the illustration of the two rocks in the rock tumble? Remember that? Well, we're going to have to get rid of those corners, and we're going to have to learn. The corners are what you were brought up with in your family of origin of how you look at life, right? And living with the person according to knowledge is what? When you become those two barbarians that can flow around each other, that know how to relate, to know where the wounds are, so you keep your hands off them. So you learn how to relate to that person, and you take into account that that is a unique person. See what I'm saying? Even physically, men and women are very, very different. But let's look at some of the differences. First, every cell between a man and a woman is different. Has different chromosomes, doesn't it? Women have a stronger constitution. They outlive men by 4 to 8 years. Women's metabolism is lower than men's, making them more able to withstand high temperatures because metabolism slows down less. Women have a shorter head, a broader face, less protruding chin, shorter legs, and a stronger trunk. They have a larger stomach, kidneys, liver, appendix, but smaller lungs, and breathing power is significantly lower than men. That's why athletics, you see. They have a larger, more active thyroid gland, provides cold resistance, smooth skin, relatively hairless body, thin layer of fat underneath the skin. Women's blood has 20% more water than men. Therefore, they tire easily and are more prone to faint. The heartbeat is more rapid, about 80 beats per second versus 72 beats per second, and the blood pressure is 10 points lower than men. Women have reproductive functions, of course, that men don't have. They also have hormonal differences and numerous other influence on behavior and feelings. Women have more left-right connectors, larger emotional side of the brain. The actual seat of emotions is wired differently. When I say sometimes that I want to get a chuckle out of women, I just say men are defective. Because we were all born with the same amount of neural connections between our left and right brain, and the male hormone dissolved about 25% of those connectors. So see, if we weren't damaged, it would all be okay, right? Sexual differences. Women's sex drive is related to the menstrual period. Men are influenced by their sexual hormone. Women are stimulated by touch, personality, and romantic words. Men are stimulated by sight, and they're less discriminating. Women need emotional and mental preparation. Without it, they feel repulsed and even like a prostitute. Men lack intuitive awareness of true intimacy and their desire for all aspects of it. Lover, best friend, fan, homemaker, appreciated partner, etc. They don't know how to encourage and to love their wives or treat her in the way that meets her deepest needs. It's just where you start. Doesn't mean you have to stay there, right? You can learn. Men are not trained or equipped to express unselfish love as well as women are, because women do that toward their kids. Emotional differences. Men are more interested in significance, job, things, logic, dominance, express hostility with physical violence. Women love, relationship, people, feelings, expressing hostility verbally. As an example, on a vacation, what does the woman want to do? See everything. The butterfly again wants to flutter around and see the flowers, and wants to stop at the rest stops, and wants to stop at every monument they go by, and etc., etc. What does the man want to do?
Just plow through it.
He wants to get there, at least 400 miles a day minimum, and he has a goal and he's going for it. How about when they go out shopping? How many of you know that that's one of the areas where men and women drive each other crazy?
I like shopping.
Okay? Well, it depends on it. Because what are women looking for in shopping? They're going out trying on things to see what they're like. And by the way, women, you know how you drive men crazy? See, they don't understand you, so they think you're going to buy everything. So everything you try on, they think as a candidate you're going to buy it. And therefore their little money signs are going off all over the place, and they're trying to figure out how they're going to tell you that they don't want you to buy that. You know what I mean? What do men do? Well, men go shopping sort of like they're hunting. They put their rifle over their shoulder. They're going to the first store that has that, and they take it, and they've won, and they go home. A woman can go from store to store and spend all this time trying things, just looking at things, and just looking at the flowers in the stores make her happy, and it can be a fun time, and she can buy nothing in the entire day, and it will still be fun. But men are pulling their hair out if they go with you because they think you're going to purchase everything and you're going to bankrupt them in one day. And of course, once they have their goal accomplished, they're ready to go home. They don't want to stay around the mall all day just going around looking at things. Let me give you a hint. All you have to do to make the guy okay is get him some sort of a goal of what he's going for, Well, he could pick up some batteries in Radio Shack or something. And that way he accomplished something, and therefore the day's okay. You know what I mean? But the idea, see, we're talking about here is accommodating each other in some way. And that's really important that we learn to do that. What are some complaints that men and women have about each other? Men are too domineering and critical. They try to control her every move with a possessive grip. They trample on her sense of self-worth and ridicule her. They never take time to listen. In one marriage and family seminar I was doing, I just said, okay, ladies, all at once, yell out what's wrong with men. And the whole audience yelled out at once, they don't listen. Let's back off a little bit, and let's look at this from a different perspective. A lot of you heard of the book, Men Are From Mars, Women From Venus. I'm going to summarize part of that because it has some very good things to say. Now, Dr. Gray, who wrote that book, by the way, was a monk who had come out of the monastery. And so this is the way he got his information. This was his line. He went to women and said, I've been in the monastery almost all of my life. I knew nothing about women. Tell me. How do you think women took that? Oh yeah, we'll help you, right? But anyway, so he had some unique perspectives. You can't go along with his morals or some other things like that. But the thing is that he came up with some ways of looking at life in a pretty good way to understand the difference. His point of view is what? Men come from Mars, women come from Venus. There are two different planets, and they operate by two different, completely different sets of rules. So let's look at the rules now, first on Mars. This is where the men live. And what are the rules where men live? Well, the first thing is everything is competition. In other words, see, what is football all about? What are sports all about? Competition. Not yet. We got these rules and we're going to win. It's predominance, right? The two bull elks locking horns, you know, we're going to knock heads until we finally decide who's best and who's strongest here and who's going to win, right? So it's all winning. The second thing is, it's all performance. It's all accomplishing things. The way I'm worthwhile is if I can accomplish things, if I can play basketball better than you can, if I can accomplish, if I can produce at work. It's all getting things done. There's another rule on Mars, and it is you only get credit for it if you do it by yourself. Ever ask yourself the question, why is that men generally won't stop for directions? The reason they won't stop for directions is because if they did, they lose the credit. But if they drive around for 8 hours and finally find where they're supposed to be going, where they could have got it in 10 seconds if they had stopped and asked, they won. You see, they accomplished, they finally won. They did it themselves. So if you just take those three basic rules, they're more, I'm just going to take those three and contrast them. Now let's go over to Venus. And let's see what the rules are on Venus. Okay, the first rule is, the only thing that counts is relationships. So ladies will just spend time, and their highest priority is what? Relationships. The second rule is that they never compete. In fact, what they will do is if somebody does something for them, intuitively they'll know and they'll do something back for them sort of automatically. Do you see what I mean? They know to keep relationships balanced. They understand intimacy. They understand all these things, and that's all they do. That's what they major in. And the third rule is, you don't get credit for anything unless you do it with somebody else. Okay? That's why if you see women doing stuff, another woman will join them and they'll be very happy. They'll go over and do this, and then they'll go over and do that. See, I found out a long time in my own marriage, if we need to get something done around the house, if I just ask my wife to do it, it's probably not going to get done. But if I will go and do it with her, it will get done. There will be no problem at all. See, now let's take it, even extrapolate that a bit further. Extrapolate that into the workplace. What does the man's workplace look like? How do they operate? They give people orders and they send them to do it. And if you send a man and you tell him to go do that, and then you go check up on him, how's he going to feel? Very unhappy. Ever heard of the 60-mile screwdriver? There was somebody, the boss above you that lives 60 miles away is calling all the time and telling you exactly how to do things. You see what I'm saying? So from a man's perspective, you're managing men. And by the way, this is very important. I had a client one time, and he came in and he was telling me about his job. And I basically was, he was telling me that he worked for a woman, and all the people working for him were women. And they were just frustrating him so much, he was just tearing his hair out. Because he would tell them to do something, and they always wanted him to come over and check it. They always wanted him to do it with them. And he couldn't get anything done that way. You know? And I say, I think you got a problem. I think you need to go back tomorrow and apologize to all your workers. He was getting out of for, you see what I'm saying? He was fired the next day. See, because he was managing women, like you manage men. You see what I'm saying? It's a very different thing. And these perspectives, these are innate type of things. You see what I'm saying? They would apply to 90% of the women or the men that you see. The other 10%, because of things in their family of origin and stuff, you can get some things switched. Sometimes these things will be switched. But generally, they're pretty persistent, just automatically, based on how men and women are different. So what's going to happen if we take a man and a woman and we stick them together, based just on those 3 rules? What is going to happen? Well, in most marriages, within the first year, what does the woman think about her husband?
Why did I get married?
He is a selfish, no good, blankety blank. Because the only thing he cares about himself. Because what's going on? She's going by women's rules, right? And what are women's rules? You give, and they automatically give back to you. You don't have to ask, right? Okay? And she wants to do everything together, right? What does he want to do? Everything apart. And she is interested in relationships, and he's primarily interested in doing things and accomplishing things. So to see what happens. So she gives and gives and gives, and since this is all competition, you understand that, right? He takes and takes and takes. See, if you're a good man and you're playing tennis with somebody, right, and they're a lousy tennis player, what do? You smash them into the ground. You know? A 7-0, 7-0, 7-0. You know? What happens if the guy treats his wife that way? What does she think? Yeah. From her perspective, what is that? Yeah. But you see what I'm saying? The problem is, though, we all think the other person is like us, and therefore we don't see it from their perspective. And therefore you get all sorts of junk going on, all sorts of misinterpretation of what the other person intended by what they were doing and what it meant to them. Women only ask one question. What's that question?
How much do you love me?
Do you love me? And see, they interpret everything through those eyeglasses. The average man doesn't have a clue that this is the case. How does the average man make his decisions concerning what he is going to do? He takes the data and he says, well, I think this is probably what's best. But he doesn't even think, how is my wife going to look at this if I do it? And of course, he has a totally different perspective. As an example, one particular guy, they got married, and he came from a very impoverished childhood. He was an engineer. So what was his first priority, do you think, in life? Save money. And his wife wanted to go to college. What do you think he said? Too bad.
Too expensive.
Of course, what he didn't know was that one of the main issues in his wife's family of origin is that they had never, her parents had never supported her for her bachelor's degree, and he was just stepping on a major landmine. But see, he didn't know, and he thought he was doing what was right. And how did she feel? She was being abandoned just like her family had abandoned her before. And how many emotions do you think that brought up? And especially when she needed a car to go to college, because she did it anyway. And of course, how do you see that? Rebellion. And when he wouldn't provide her the car, how do you think she saw that? Do you see what I'm saying? It doesn't take very much, and you can have a perfect butterfly and a buffalo, and they're both doing, from their own perspective, what they believe is completely right. This is what God would want me to do, and so on and so forth. And the other person can totally misinterpret the entire thing and think that the other person hates their guts, doesn't love them, doesn't have their best interest in mind, and so on. So what's going to be one of your jobs as a counselor? Help them to see it from the other person's point of view. And help them to understand, because if you don't, what's going to happen? These perceptions are going to blow their entire marriage out of the water no matter what you do. And so a lot of marriage and family and marital therapy and so on is just helping them to see it from the other person's point of view. And of course that's called empathy, isn't it? You have to build empathy in those people. Now I realize there are a bunch of other things about men and women that you need to know to help them understand each other. Another one is sort of rules about fixing things. What are women's rule about fixing things? If it's not broke, make it better. Improve it. The Home Improvement Committee. They're always looking for things to make things better, right? What are men's rules about fixing things? If it's not broke, don't mess with it, right? So how do you think he perceives stuff? When she is going around trying to mess with everything and redo everything and redecorate the house all the time. By the way, what's another thing about women that's different? Women are attached to their environment. That means they are their house. They are their car. They are their cooking. So they are their body shape. So if you criticize a woman's car or her house, or especially her body shape or her weight, what is going to happen? Yes, because see, to a man, he's not attached to these things. So if you criticize his car, unless of course he's one of these really freaky into the car thing and build it himself and so on and so forth, you understand? So you're attacking his performance. Then you're in trouble. You understand what I'm saying? But if you just say, well, I'm not sure I really like that kind of car, you're probably okay. But see, if you say that to a woman, see, again on weight, if you tell a man, looks like you're too heavy, you probably ought to lose weight, how does he take it? Well, that's changeable. It's not really me. I can do something about that, no real problem. What happens if you tell a woman that she's fat? What is going to happen? You are going to wish you didn't, and she is going to remember it for a long, long time.
Why do they have a better memory than
You sort of see the problem. Because see, to her, that is her. And you just called her ugly. It's a permanent thing. You see what I'm saying? It's not seen as a temporary thing that can just be fixed. It's a permanent characteristic about her. And so you're going to find you really get into trouble. Another one that's really important is men are rubber bands. Women have one pole. That is called intimacy and closeness. That means you put two women together, and they can be together, and they can maintain that relationship very close forever. Men have two poles. They have the pole of closeness and intimacy, but they also have the pole of autonomy. And men are rubber bands. They go like this. Snap, snap, snap. In other words, when they're home with you, ladies, and something starts building inside of them, they want to go out and kill a saber-toothed tiger. They want to go tilt a windmill. They want to go to work. They've got to accomplish something. They need a new boat. They have something that they have to go out and do. Kill the dragon of life. Do something. And see, what happens to a woman when she starts feeling distance occurring between her and somebody else? If she sees this from her own perspective, what happens? What does she think?
They don't love me anymore.
There's something wrong in my marriage. There's something wrong with my relationship. You see what I'm saying? And so what is she going to do at that point? What's wrong or hold on. What happens if a woman does that? He loses his feelings for her because he gets his feelings for her when he's out here chasing the dragons. See, he goes out to Iraq to war. In Iraq, then he thinks about how wonderful it is being home. So then he comes home, and as soon as he gets home, he starts getting his feelings to want to go back out again. And as soon as he gets out there, he starts getting his feelings to want to come back home. So he goes like this. That's what they say that men are rubber bands. Do you see the idea? But you see, if you interpret that from a woman's point of view, what does it look like? He's unstable. He doesn't care about her. Why can't he just stay home? How about in codependent relationships? What happens? Every time he wants to go out hunting, she's unhappy. See what I'm saying? So you get a dynamic built off this. That's a real problem. Okay? Another one for women. Women are waves. What I mean by that, I'm saying women have two cycles, not one cycle. One, you have the menstrual cycle that most men are aware of and so on, and hormonal problems and stuff like that, PMS. But there's another cycle. And this cycle has to do with how you feel secure in life. It's sort of like this. You're feeling sort of, things are pretty good in my marriage, the wave starts building, we're doing pretty good, and the wave crashes. When the wave crashes, you're very insecure, you're looking desperately for this man that's supposed to meet all your needs according to his riches and glory, and he's going to make you feel good about yourself and make you feel loved, right? What comes out when the wave crashes? Have you ever been to the ocean? When the wave crashes on the beach, what happens? All the junk from the ocean gets thrown up on the beach, right? So what happens when a woman's wave crashes? All the stuff she never told you about for the last month gets thrown up on the beach. You get all the logs and all the hurts and all the stuff and how you just don't love her and how you don't spend enough time with her and everything else you can possibly imagine gets thrown up on the beach. Now, what do you think happens in a marriage if about the time he is going back out in his rubber band, her wave crashes? We're going to be in trouble, aren't we? Also emotions. This is what I say to guys, okay? Say to guys, I just want you to let you know something. There are going to be certain times in your life when your wife is in PMS, when her wave has crashed, when she's tired, when she's angry, when she's hungry. If you try to resolve anything, you deserve every kick you're going to get. Because that's the time to duck. That's the time to be very nice. That's the time to just accommodate her. And by the way, don't you dare say, is it just your PMS? Don't ask her if her wave crashed. Don't ask her, just realize, if as an example, you're going through the mall and your wife is sort of getting really, mean. Look for the nearest place to eat. Or if you know she's tired, You say, honey, let's just go to bed early tonight. But the idea is we need to learn to live with them according to knowledge, don't we? And if you don't, see, all these areas are blatant areas of conflict between men and women. And they happen consistently in most marriages. But how are they interpreted by the other person? And the woman just feels this guy's just as selfish. He needs socialization. I mean, let's say he did dog training or something. You know what I mean? And how does the man look at it? She's just a nag. You can never please her. No matter what you do, it's never going to be good enough, right? Because see, how do women act at that time? Okay, they're trying to deal with it. Next week we're talking more about communication. But they're trying to deal with this stuff inside of them. But how do they come across to the man? As critical. There's nothing he can do that's right. So he throws up his hands and quits and walks off. And then how does she feel? He abandoned me. He didn't meet my emotional needs. What a jerk. Because that's not a way. What would a woman do in that situation? No. Well, she might cry, but no, she'd go talk. Right? She would go and find somebody to talk to, and she would talk more about that next week. How about, let's talk about emotional needs for a second. Some of you may have heard of the book, His Needs, Her Needs. We carry, I think we have more of these in here. But the entire book is just written about the needs of men and the needs of women. Are they different? How about totally different? Not just a little bit different, but totally different because of the priorities, because of looking at things. Men need trust, acceptance, appreciation, admiration, approval, encouragement. And these are emotional needs I'm talking about. Okay, could be other needs that we'll look at. Okay? Women need caring, understanding, respect, devotion, validation, and reassurance. What are some of the mistakes that men and women make?
Some of what?
Mistakes. These are the things that are very typical mistakes that men and women make that basically offend the other person. We'll find that next time we'll find a lot more in communication. We'll see that. I'm trying to avoid getting into communication stuff here today. Try to improve him or offer advice. How does a man take it if you tell him what to do? The hair stands up in his head, in the back of his neck, his fangs come out, he lowers his head and he charges, right? Try to control him by sharing upset feelings. If he really loved me, then if I tell him how upset I am, then he would do what I want him to do, right?
Yeah.
Not going to work.
You said trying to control him
By sharing upset feelings. Complain about what he has not done, instead of appreciating what he has done. Remember what I said about that? If a man feels appreciated, he'll do anything for you. What will he do for you if you complain about what he hasn't done?
Absolutely. Probably not do it.
Probably not do it or do less, probably. Correct him as if he were a child. How will you think that one goes over? Just make him another one of your children and see how well it works. Express upset feelings with rhetorical questions. You know what a rhetorical question is? Where you're really not looking for the answer, you're just, how do you think you would feel if? Criticize his initiatives or decisions. See, you blew it again. You can never make a right decision, can you? When are you going to grow up? See, the idea is what? You need to learn that those are things that are really going to affect men and are going to really, I mean, these are all hand grenades. If you want to throw a hand grenade in your marriage, this is how to do it, right? Okay, the other way. Mistakes that men make. They don't listen. They take her feelings literally and correct her, discounting her feelings. They listen and get angry because she's upset with them. See, a lot of men, especially codependent men, believe it's their job to keep their wife happy. So if their wife is not happy, what does it mean? They fail. Okay? Listening and gets angry because she's upset with him. He minimizes the importance of her feelings or needs. Right. Next, she feels she's not number one in his life. That's sports or cars or work or kids or ex-wife or somebody is more important than she is. Explains why he is right and why she should not be upset. Yeah, discounting basically her intuitive way of making decisions versus his logical way. And a lot of guys, you know, our logic is so superior. Don't you ladies realize that?
Would you say that again?
After listening, he withdraws. I'll read that list to you one more time. Doesn't listen, takes her feelings literally and corrects her, listens and gets angry because she upsets him, minimize the importance of her feelings or needs, not number one, explains why he is right and why she should not be upset. After listening, he withdraws. You see the kind of problems that we have. Let's hit one more thing here. Men and women give different points. Now, later on, we'll be talking about a whole theory of marriage called the love bank theory by a Dr. Harlow. Okay, what he basically says is that people give points when people meet their needs. But we need to understand that men and women give different points. So if you want a strategy of how to show that you love somebody, okay, then you need to realize what they're going to give points for. Okay? Here's the rule. Women give 1 point for everything. That's it. I don't care if you buy her a new car, you get 1 point. Or on the way into the house, you pick a dandelion and give it to her and tell her you love her, you just got 1 point. Or if you take her out to dinner, you got 1 point. If you took her out to a movie, you got 1 point. Because to a woman, what's important? Do you love me? So every one of those is an expression of love. Do you see what I mean? And that's the thing that counts. So therefore, how big the thing you did or how little the thing you did only gets 1 point. The important thing is you showed that you loved, you showed that you cared, because to her, the relationship is the biggest thing. So guys, you know when you're going to buy her the 6-carat diamond ring? Now you will get a little bit more than a 1-carat diamond ring, but it's primarily the thought that counts. So a strategy of guys, what should it be? Do a lot of things that show your love. Like as an example on Valentine's Day, let me give you guys a hint. Get a whole bunch of those little Valentine's cards and hide them all over the house. So for the entire next year, she is still finding little love you Valentine cards. He said, I mean, and you'll get a lot more points than you do if you buy her one of those $5 ones. And it's probably going to be cheaper too, guys. No, you don't dare tell her that or you lost it all. You know what I mean? Okay, gals. What do you do for men? Men give a whole lot of points for big things. They don't give little points for little things. In other words, if he's wanted this boat for a long time, and you get him the boat, he'll remember that for the rest of his life. And you'll get 1,000 points for the boat. Do you see what I'm saying? Or the shotgun, or the other thing, whatever you do. Do you see what I'm saying? That the guy will remember that, and you'll get a whole bunch of points. And he'll remember, man, she really loved me. Remember the time when she sacrificed and saved the money, and I didn't have enough money, and she got that for me. That'll go for the rest of your marriage. Do you see what I'm saying? But, you know, giving him a gumdrop, not going to get a lot more. You know what I mean? You know, our dandelion, not to get anything for that one. All he's going to say, what is this? Yeah. Or, you know, the deal of, you know, you get him a new shirt like all the other shirts he has, you know, or a tie or something for his birthday. Not going to get a lot for that. But I tell you what, get him a PlayStation 2. Yeah, I'm sure you've heard the saying, you know, that the boys love their toys. They just get more expensive as they get older. But anyway, the idea is what? There's some very, very big differences between men and women, aren't there? And the thing that you need to do in counseling is you're going to have to try to get the other person to see it. Because remember, in communication, as we talk about next time, it's not what you send. It's what you receive, isn't it? That counts. See, I can send you the best message in the world, but if you misinterpret my message and you don't receive that message and you receive something totally garbled and different, what's going to happen? Miscommunication. So then the other area in which men and women are the biggest, most different, that we're going to be talking about next time, is going to be in communication differences between men and women. And that's one of the biggest areas and the biggest problems that we really have. As I said, I believe 50% of all problems in a marriage, of all offenses, perceived offenses in the marriage, are due to this very fact that people are assuming the other person who is sending them the message, they interpret everything from their own point of view, from their own set of eyeglasses, from their own way of interpreting things. And there's no marriage that's going to make it that way. Because they're going to have all these feelings, all of these thoughts. I think I mentioned last time about the lady who, on their honeymoon, he said to her, "You have cow's eyes." I'll tell you that story. We'll conclude with that. I want to show you of how your perception from where you're coming from is so very different. It's a true story. I had this couple after 35 years of marriage. And there was an underlying bitterness, underlying problem. And so I started going, okay, let's go find out what the problems are. I call it digging up the dead cats, you know. And let's go and look at this. And the first one we got to, and she had never told him this in their entire lifetime, 35 years, on their honeymoon. You know, fantastic time, everything. They're looking at each other. He turns to her and says, "Honey, you've got cow's eyes." Now, You ladies, some of you ladies had a little problem with that. How did you interpret what I just said? You're as ugly as a cow. But being from Kansas, what did he mean? Your eyes are big and dreamy. It was a compliment. Can you see the difference? If you're a farmer and you have cows and so on, and how cows' eyes are, you see what I'm saying?
Well, they have long eyelashes.
Yes.
Pretty.
Yes. Depends on how you perceive it, but coming from two different perceptions, can you see how we can have these terrible miscommunications that just totally cause chaos in a relationship if they don't get worked out? And that's what gender issues is all about, and that's when next time we're going to talk about communication and talk about those kind of issues. Let's pray. Lord, we ask that you would open our eyes and our hearts and help us to realize that men and women are so different we can't expect them to see things the same way. And Lord, help us to be willing to learn to live with them according to knowledge, to cross over on that other side, and to try and see things the way they see them and interpret things the way they interpret, so we can truly understand and learn to love and have compassion for each other in Jesus' name.
Jesus is the answer for the world today. Above him there's no other, 'cause Jesus is the way. Jesus is the answer for the world today. Above him there's no